Okay, can I have your attention, please? We're going to get the Winter Flounder board going, so could the board members please take your seats. Okay, welcome to the Winter Flounder board. Running a little bit behind, but we have a pretty short agenda, in fact a truncated agenda. First item on it is the approval of the agenda, and they have the most up-to-date one?
Yes.
Okay. You'll note that a couple of items have been deleted from it. The FMP timeliness purposes, the FMP review, date compliance reports. So the only thing on the agenda is actually the review and setting of the 2015 specifications. So with that, are there any objections to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, the agenda stands approved. Next item is approval of proceedings from the October 2014 annual meeting. Are there any requests for edits? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like the minutes to reflect that I did, in fact, attend that board meeting. I arrived a little bit late. I just was after the attendance sheet went around.
Thank you, Emerson. Anything else on the proceedings? Is there any objection to approval of the proceedings? Seeing none, they stand approved. Next agenda item is opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone this would be on items not on the agenda that is not related to the 2015 specifications? Is there anyone from the audience wishing to comment or address this board? Seeing none, we'll go right to item 4, the 2015 specifications, and Melissa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So now we will talk about the Winter Flounder specifications for the 2015 fishing year, which starts on May 1st. So as a review, the specifications process for the Gulf of Maine and Southern New England stocks were established by the Addendum 3 to Amendment 1. So the Management Board can adjust the following commercial and recreational management measures listed here. So this table shows the current management measures. There is a 12-inch size limit across the table. The commercial trip limit is 500 pounds for Gulf of Maine and 50 pounds, or 38 fish, for Southern New England, Mid-Atlantic area. The recreational bag limits are 8 fish in Gulf of Maine and 2 fish in Southern New England. For the 2014 season, the Southern New England recreational season was extended from March 1st through December 31st. So at this time, the federal specifications have not yet been finalized. This table shows the preferred options. As you can see, the state water subcomponent, it is not a catch limit, rather it is based on recent catch landings. And so since we have not been catching as much of the subcomponent in recent years, it has been reduced to 17% of the ABC, which is down from 25% in 2014. This equates to 87 metric tons. And the annual catch limit for the Gulf of Maine has been reduced to 489 metric tons. This is down from 1,040 in 2014. And this is based on the stock assessment update that was completed last year. In Southern New England, the state water subcomponent is reduced to 7% of the ABC, which is down from 14% in 2014. This equates to 117 metric tons. The annual catch limit is only slightly down from last year's, currently at preferred option at 1,607 metric tons. So just a brief review of the advisory panel and technical committee reports that were given last time in October. The advisory panel has no additional comments. They maintain that they wish to reduce the bag limit in Gulf of Maine proportionate to the federally specified ABCs. For Southern New England, they also stand by having a moratorium on fishing. And the technical committee has no additional comments to their report from last time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Melissa. Are there any questions for Melissa? Doug.
Just about a question in the Gulf of Maine. The ABC and the ACL was cut by more than 50%. And our state subcomponent, is that reflective of that kind of a change here? Was our landings reflective, was that 87 metric tons reflective of what we've been landing in the past few years, or reflective of what we've been landing in the past few years plus a cut of 50%?
I believe it's based solely on the past landings.
Dave Simpson, then Emerson.
Thanks. I'm not sure it's a question for Melissa or perhaps you, but I was wondering, at our last board meeting, we urged the NOAA Fisheries and the New England Council to consider a more conservative approach on winter flounder harvest in southern New England. I wondered if we could get a report back on progress on that front.
Yes. I don't know that it's been, I'm not aware that it's been done. So.
I mean, a letter has been sent, and we did discuss it at the last NRCC meeting, that we do have these concerns for winter flounder and that we want to do more collaborative management process with the New England Council. Both Bob and I have sat down and talked with Tom Neese a little bit about it, as well as with Terry. We do, have commissioners that are here at the table that also sit on the New England Council, and so I think it's going to be a collaborative effort between us and the board members to really get the New England Council to engage in this discussion in order to get this effort moving forward to really have these concerns addressed.
Dave, I guess the direct answer is, you and I have not collaborated with the commission on a letter to the council, so if the board still feels strongly that needs to be done, then we need to do that.
Okay, and I think it's beyond just the council. I think the expansion of the TAC was sort of my impression at the urging of NOAA, trying to look for a way to mitigate effects of the groundfish disaster, and I recall a pretty stern urging from NOAA Fisheries, from the former regional administrator, when they were looking to zero out harvest, and they did zero out harvest in federal waters, and they were urging the commission to stay with them on this conservation track, and we continued to allow a 50-pound bycatch, and now we've done this flip-flop where I'm concerned that the little bitty gains we've made on winter flounder, which is a coastal near-shore spawner, that we're losing those modest gains, and I just think in terms of beyond the council, NOAA Fisheries needs to grab a hold of this and be more aggressive at conserving this stock.
Emerson, and then Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for southern New England Mid-Atlantic, and it's similar to the question for Gulf of Maine. So the reduction for southern New England Mid-Atlantic from 14% to 7%. Again, is that based on a reduction in the TAC and or the fact that landings in 2014 were at that 1,607 metric ton level? And if so, what were the landings for southern New England Mid-Atlantic for 2014? Thank you.
To answer the first part of your question, it is again based on recent catch landings. I don't have the numbers pulled up for me right now, but I can get back to you on that if you want the actual catch landings.
Yeah, so it's the recent catch history, and as you can see on the slide what the catch limit was, 1612 and 1607, so it's very close. So the 7% drop to 70% is based on the recent catch performance.
Right, but the 1612, those were the landings last year, or that was the landing limit last year, right? That was the 14% of the TAC, or maybe I'm just not following this.
So in southern New England, the annual catch limit has not been changed because the stock assessment update will be completed this year. The Gulf of Maine was reduced because the update was done last year. So they base it on the stock assessment results.
Tom Fode?
Yeah, that 1607 is really an interesting figure, because if we looked at the catch in state waters, it's not 1607. That basically is the landings that were landed at EZ and landed in state waters, if I'm correct. So we should be able to pull out the two sectors of what's coming out, what's being caught in state waters, because there was none of those great numbers. Those are from the 5,000-pound trip limits that went out. I mean, so, and also the recreational catch, because of the small bag limit and the truncated season that they were forced into. So we shouldn't be using any of those points over the years as we look at them, because it's a whole different ball game. And I would like to see the number, what happened in federal waters, what happened in state waters, being broken down.
Tony?
Just to clarify and just to help refresh everybody's memory, that the total annual catch limits are set based on assessment information for both stocks. And as Melissa said, Gulf of Maine was updated, so that's why there was a large adjustment between this year and last year. And then based on that, then the council makes recommendations to NOAA fisheries for each of the subcomponent fisheries in federal waters. They take what the average state landings have been in the past and have that number and subtract that from the ACL. We are not held accountable to those landings because we do not have a quota. So those landings, those state water subcomponents go up and down as state water landings go up and down. The federal fisheries, so those federal subcomponents, are held accountable to their quotas. They have accountability measures that attach to them. So that total annual catch limit is the total allowable catch for all of the fisheries, but knowing that our state waters landings are not accountable and can fluctuate, and that's why our numbers go up and down.
To follow up, Tom?
That really doesn't get to the point what I'm talking about, is that the state landings, because we have 50-pound trip limits, are so small because we constricted them. So I'd like to know what the catch was from last year from federal waters that came into and landed in the state waters, because they were all done by draggers that were not done by
the state water landings that they use to figure out what the state water subcomponent is only for those landings that occur from state permit holders. It doesn't account for the landings that occurred in federal waters and then were landed in the state, because obviously all the federal water landings have to get landed in each of the states, but they associate the landings with the appropriate permit that they have. And because it is a groundfish species, there are very strict reporting requirements for those, and so you can distinguish those landings.
Melissa has some additional information for you.
So for the commercial sector and common pool catch monitoring, I have some data for those subcomponents. So in the 2014 fishing season, in Gulf of Maine, again, the sector and common pool only caught 23.7% of their subquota, and in southern New England, they only caught 65.2%.
And Dave, I got Dave Pierce.
Well, Tony said much of what I was going to say, but I'll add a little bit, and that is the state subcomponent is not a specific state allocation. It is an amount the New England Council essentially says to us, ASMFC, to state permit holders, no federal permit, this is what we'd like you to catch and no more. That's pretty much what it is. In a sense, it's guidance. Assumed take by fishermen in state waters who have state permits only. we always wonder every year, what should the state subcomponent be? And unfortunately, it always comes down to, what did the states take? State permit holders only. All right, then that'll be your number for the next year. So the more restrictive ASMFC is to deal with our problems inside state waters, our need to conserve and to rebuild, to cut effort on winter flounder, we find ourselves consistently faced with less available as a subcomponent that the council, of which I am a part, that the council expects the ASMSC to live with as best we can. And we've done that consistently. And now we see that the state subcomponent for 2015 is dropping from 25 to 17 in the Gulf of Maine, Southern New England, Mid-Atlantic from 14 to 17%. And certainly those with state permits only in our different states can argue, where's the fairness of that? And it's a very legitimate question to ask. I think most states have said consistently, relative to these particular state subcomponents, that most of our fishermen, commercial fishermen anyways, are federal permit holders. Therefore, when we have to discuss the state subcomponent, we tend to favor the federal approach, the council approach, because most of our fishermen are federal permit holders. But when it comes time to address recreational fishermen, the state subcomponent that pertains to them, well, it's a different story, because it's pretty much all inside state waters, certainly in the Gulf of Maine, and I think primarily Southern New England, Mid-Atlantic. So I guess it comes down to this board making the call. Do we feel that we should stay at 25% in 2015 for the Gulf of Maine? And should we stay at 14% in 2015 for Southern New England, Mid-Atlantic, and then take necessary actions to restrain catch to those amounts? To me, that is the question. I'll also add and then end that with regard to Gulf of Maine codfish, in order to deal with the Gulf of Maine cod problem that we had a few years ago, and it still exists, the collapse of the Gulf of Maine stock, the subcomponent, the Gulf of Maine cod subcomponent, was reduced by the National Marine Fisheries Service. The fish were, in a sense, given to federal permit holders in order to assist those federal permit holders. And I supported that because of the concern we had about Gulf of Maine cod and our federal permit holders. So I'm not prepared to make a motion, but maybe I will. Well, when it's time for a motion, Mr. Chairman, I will make one with regard to the state subcomponent for 2015.
Thank you. Rick Bellavance, Dave Simpson, and then Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Pierce pretty much hit the nail right on the head with what I was thinking, and I feel like industry is concerned with what they see as a perceived shift of the resource from a state waters fishery to a federal fishery, and we should be aware of that, and probably I'm looking forward to Dr. Pierce's motion. Thanks.
Okay, just one other point I forgot to make, and staff correct me if I'm wrong, but if the board takes no action, these specifications stay in place. They don't expire. So no action would mean status quo, and we would roll these over. If we want to change them, then of course we'd need a motion. But Dave Simpson.
Let's see. I guess there's a couple of parts. One, I'm thinking along the same lines as Dr. Pierce and Rick Bellavance. The other is I recall reading something about in future stock assessments, some revisiting of the assessment areas for winter flounder, and that maybe, am I remembering this correctly, that the entire coast would be assessed as one unit, Gulf of Maine and Southern New England, along with George's. I'm getting puzzled looks, so maybe I'm remembering the wrong species at the wrong time or something, but I seem to recall reading that was one of the considerations for the next assessment. Not seeing anything clear coming out of there. I'm torn because I would like to see winter flounder mortality reduced to very close to zero. I think we're taking appropriate action in the states, at the commission. I think there's been a little bit of we're going to use a little bit of rebuilding to ease economic concerns for the groundfish industry, and I maybe get that a little bit more in the Gulf of Maine, but in Southern New England, I think the greatest impact economically has been in the Gulf of Maine, not in Southern New England. So a subsidy in the form of higher quotas in Southern New England, I think, is misplaced, And I'll also observe that it's in the high 90% level that these landings go to one state. So this isn't broadly shared by even federal permit holders across multiple southern New England states. It all gets landed in one state, generally speaking. There's probably 5% that gets landed elsewhere. So that leads me to consider taking a more aggressive approach, as much as it's distasteful to me, to increase take in state waters. If we can't achieve conservation, why don't we just cash in on some of this biomass out there and increase trip limits for the commercial fishery to 1,000 or 2,000 pounds, and open up the recreational fishery for whatever fish they can find they can have, because we're not achieving any conservation by going it alone on winter flounder.
Thanks, Dave. Tom?
I just agree with Dave's last statement. I mean, it's very difficult. A lot of my commercial fishermen in state waters don't have federal permits because they're pound net fishermen, and they depend on that for their livelihood, and they've taken a real economic hit, which we could point out if we had economic statistics on winter flounder, by going to 50 pounds or 38 fish is what we do in New Jersey. And the recreational sector, it put a lot of tackle stores with that would be the opening season, not in business because they're not catching that many to make a worthwhile effort to go out. So, and we didn't complain about that. We were fine with doing that. They screamed a little and they yelled a little, both the recreational and the commercial, but we were building the stock. But what had to happen last year with 5,000-pound trip limits, and I did look at the state landings compared to the federal landing, and it would take, I think, of the recreational community 1,000 years to catch what one boat did in 10 trips, and the same thing with the commercial pound net fishermen in the United States. It would take them 10 years to catch up to what they caught in 10 trips. So I think we need to basically address this, because this is not fair and equitable, and if you're right, the landers are going to one state.
Dave Pierce, were you ready to make a motion?
I was prepared to go with status quo, so no motion is required.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from the board on this matter? So it's recognizing that we'll be at status quo for fishing year 2015, absent an action otherwise. So I think that's where we are. We have status quo for 2015. Dave Pierce.
Yeah, I consider that to be an appropriate action. I need to highlight something that will be presented at the NEMAP board coming up later on this afternoon. A presentation is going to be given by Dr. Armstrong of our Bottom Troll Survey inside state waters, the Gulf of Maine, southern New England, in our waters, of course. And we're continuing to get nothing but bad news relative to winter flounder in those geographic locations. We continue to see abysmal levels of winter flounder in both regions. In the southern New England area, we're now again, a historic low. It keeps getting lower and lower every year, and we're seeing that in the Gulf of Maine as well for our spring surveys. So there still is a necessity for us to be conservative and restrictive in our waters to deal with this lack of fish, this low abundance, notwithstanding whatever percentage we are allocated as a subcomponent.
Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the Winter Flounder Board? Seeing none, the motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded by everyone. Thank you very much. We stand adjourned.